We
Yes,
flew
it
and
is.
it was
Okay.
maybe an hour or something like that on Jack. Down there.
Oh, really?
Yes. Oh, no, I take that back. We flew from Amsterdam, so.
If anyone wishes to speak, please make sure you fill out a
First meeting in a while.
comment card.
Yeah.
They're outside
Oh,
the
no, we're still missing one.
chambers.
No, no, DC, he's here. Yeah, yeah.
No way. Oh, on council. Yeah. Okay. Council. I mean, Mitchell and, well, no, they're not till 2025. Three agenda items. Makes me nervous. This week is also the week after.
I don't know why they turned.
Associated maybe with the projects, the bigger projects. I don't know. We'll see.
We're ready when you are, Francis.
Everybody's ready? Good evening. I call this April 11th Planning Commission meeting to order. We have 3 items on the agenda tonight. Before we consider them, I'd like to point out the minutes for the March 7th meeting. What's the board's desire?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from March 7th, 2024.
Second.
Motion has been made and properly seconded. Or in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries. The items that are before us tonight, if they are forwarded to council, will be considered on April the 29th, 2024. It's a Monday. The Planning Commission is a recommending body. Council makes the final decision, so our decision is to recommend. They make the final decision. The first item on the agenda is CLUP-24-02/Z-2407 CU 2404 V247 Park Wilkes. 2, Michael.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. The first request this evening is a request from the Providence Group. They're requesting a comprehensive land use plan amendment, rezoning, conditional use, and variance to allow for the construction of 34 for-sale townhomes on 3.41 acres in the downtown. Proposed density is 9.97 dwelling units per acre. There's a comprehensive land use plan amendment for the western portion of the property from commercial to mixed use live work, and a rezoning for the same property from C2 general commercial to DTLW downtown live work. There's a conditional use to increase density above 8 units per acre, and there are variances to modify downtown block and access standards to allow vehicle parking between the street and the dwelling unit. And then there's also a variance to increase the maximum lot coverage. The location map is on the overhead. The properties are located at 2220, 2240, 2260, 2270, and 2300 Old Milton Parkway. It's at the northeast corner of Old Milton Parkway and Haynesbridge Road. The eastern portion of the property is currently zoned downtown live work DTLW, which is the zoning they're requesting for the entire property. The eastern portion of the property was approved in 2018 for 2 office buildings with structured parking. Western portion of the property is Zone C2, general commercial, and the middle parcel is the only one that's currently developed with a former funeral home. As I mentioned, the applicant is requesting variances to modify interconnected streets, stub-out streets, and block standards to allow dead-end streets. Basically, the properties, there are requirements in the downtown to have interconnected developments, and since the properties are either developed or approved to the north, they do not have the ability for interparcel access with those properties. So they do require some variances to address that condition. There's also a variance to allow parking between the building and the street. That would only apply to these 6 units in this building here. So everything else is rear-loaded on the development. These are the only front-loaded townhomes, the eastern corner of the property. And then there is a variance to increase max lot coverage from 70 to 80%. The applicant's proposed density does require a conditional use to increase the density above 8 units per acre. There's similar densities approved at the adjacent properties to the north. Thompson Street Flats was approved for density up to 10 units per acre. And then this is Park Walk 1, which was recently changed from 2 condo buildings to 19 single-family detached homes. This has a density, I think it's approaching about 9. It was previously approved for up to 10. Of course, this is the applicant's site plan that I have on the overhead. The site plan shows the 34 townhomes. There's access from a new entrance off of Old Milton Parkway. And then the townhomes will have access from a new private alley. 14 rear-loaded townhomes that are oriented to Old Milton Parkway. This is their largest product at 33 feet wide. Units 15 through 28, which are these townhomes here, these are also rear-loaded, and they will front on a shared amenity space with Park Walk 1 to the north. Those units are 20 feet wide. And then the last 6 units are front-loaded, and those units are 26 feet wide. The applicant's site plan is showing a 15-foot building setback along Old Milton Parkway with a 10-foot landscape strip. All the developments along Old Milton Parkway since 2015, the downtown master plan the year the downtown master plan update was approved, in the downtown have been approved with a 20-foot setback and a 20-foot landscape strip. Except for Chelsea Walk. Chelsea Walk was approved for a 15-foot building setback and landscape strip. Each of the townhomes will have 2 side-by-side parking spaces in a garage, as well as the code-compliant driveway. And there are 4 guest parking spaces by the mail kiosk right near the entrance to the development. The code requires 85 parking spaces. This development has a total of 140. Site plan also shows the open space. There is 12.5% amenity space that is shown on the site plan. That includes an increase above the minimum 10% because of the density increase that the applicant is asking for. There is a requirement for a proportional increase to amenity space, and the applicant does meet that. So the applicant does have a pocket park right here at the entrance to the development. There's a plaza that is shown here. The plaza serves also as a fire truck turnaround. There's also a tree save area in this vicinity. This tree save area matches up with the tree save area on the property to the north. And then there's a shared amenity space on this property as well as to the property to the north. Within that tree save area, there are 3 specimen trees that are being saved, as well as 83 inches of tree groupings. City arborist did go out to the site and looked at the specimen trees on the property. He did indicate that most of the specimen trees are in various states of declining health, and that the applicant's proposed tree save area here was the best tree save for this property. show you some of the applicant's renderings. They have 3 different product types. There's 2-story and 3-story townhomes. The Alexandria product is what is along Old Milton Parkway. And these are photographs of what that will look like. The 20-foot rear entry product are the product in blue here. It's what you see here. Some of these are being developed at other downtown locations that the Providence Group is developing. Towns on Thompson is one of them. And then this is the Chaucer product on the far eastern corner of the development. The Alexandria product is shown in the Federal and Greek Revival style, and the other 2 products are in the Georgian style. They do meet, Downtown Consultant has reviewed them, and they do comply with the design regulations. The applicant has indicated that the exterior of the townhomes are going to have a brick exterior, and the units will range from 2,100 to just over 3,000 square feet. They're 3 and 4 bedroom units. Of course, looking at the review criteria for the comprehensive land use plan amendment, rezoning, conditional use, and variance, we felt that the comprehensive land use plan amendment is a change from commercial to the mixed use live work to match the eastern portion of the property. Given the current state of retail and the abundance available retail commercial space, we did not believe that additional land area was needed for commercial use. Also, we believe the applicant's proposal is consistent with policies in the comprehensive plan, which discuss implementing a walkable mixed-use environment in the downtown. Commercial development at this property would generate significantly more vehicular trips than the residential use. And again, the proposal to change both comprehensive land use plan designation and rezoning is consistent with the same on the eastern portion of the property. The conditional use to increase the density, as I mentioned earlier, the adjacent residential developments to the north were also approved for conditional use to increase density. This is right at the core, near the core of downtown, so we believe the higher density is appropriate. And they did do the proportional increase to the amenity space that was required. Do believe that there are some exceptional conditions on the property justifying the variances. The property does have an unusual shape. There's some topography on the property, especially on the eastern portion of the property. Also, I noted that the properties to the north have been either developed or approved for development, which addresses the variances related to interconnected streets. We also have a condition as it relates to the lot coverage increase. We do have a condition that would address that. We are recommending approval of that variance. However, we do have a condition that would minimize the amount of lot coverage by utilizing pervious hardscape materials. The applicant did their citizen participation plan and sent out notices to properties within 500 feet. They reported back that there were no comments received. And this was shown to the public at the March 13th Community Zoning Information Meeting. There were 2 public comments, one in support, and then there was one with questions about the density. And with that, staff is recommending approval of the applicant's request subject to 22 conditions. I'll read through those conditions. There's a couple exhibits that I just want to show you related to the conditions, just set those up. Condition 1 is the site plan specific condition rezoning the property to DTLW and tying it to the latest submitted site plan. Condition 2 is the comprehensive land use plan designation change to mixed use live work. Condition 3 addresses the architecture and materials of the townhomes. Condition 4 is the density. 5 is the variance related to block and access and vehicle parking location, approving that variance. Condition 6 is related to the maximum lot coverage increase. and allows up to 80%, except the developer shall utilize pervious hardscape materials to minimize lot coverage. Condition 7, front yards may encroach into the landscape strip, subject to meeting minimum landscape material requirements with DRB approval. Condition 8 is the streetscape improvements required along Old Milton Parkway. Old Milton Parkway is a GDOT right-of-way, so that we would be limited in some of the plantings that would be allowed along in GDOT's right-of-way. Condition 9 addresses the project entrance, alleys, and sidewalks and relates it back to the latest site plan by Travis Pruitt and Associates, dated 3/21/24. Also requires decorative pedestrian lighting throughout the development, with HOA maintaining those improvements. Condition 10 requires a minimum 20-foot building setback and landscape strip along Old Milton Parkway. Condition 11 relates to a previous condition of zoning. The eastern portion of the property, as I mentioned earlier, was approved for 2 office buildings and structured parking. At that time, the property owner did agree to planting 6-inch caliper oaks along the frontage of the property. So we just continued that condition, brought that condition forward here. Condition 12 requires 10-foot landscape strips along both sides of the project entrance, as well as a 5-foot sidewalk. 13, minimum 10-foot planted buffer shall be provided along the eastern property line that's adjacent to Cadence Bank. 14, the project entrance shall have decorative paver apron, landscape, and hardscape as approved by DRB. Those improvements maintained by the HOA. 15, a decorative wall with fence along Old Milton Parkway shall be substantially similar to East of Main as approved by DRB. So this is the wall at East of Main. It's a block, a stone wall. It has some creeping vines planted at the base of the wall, creeping up the wall. We go on to say, also ask the developer to plant creeping phlox at the top of the wall so that it drapes over the wall. Phlox is the pink and white flower that you see along Rucker Road. Condition 16 ties the open space down as shown on the latest site plan. 17 addresses the tree save area as shown on the site plan. Condition 18 also relates back to the 2018 zoning with the office buildings. The property owner at that time had agreed to provide a city-approved bus shelter at the MARTA stop. There's an existing MARTA stop in front of the former funeral home. Condition 19, unfinished wood fences and decks shall not be visible from the street. 20 requires HVAC and similar equipment to be screened or not visible from the public right-of-way. 21 requires garbage pickup from within the development, and 22 limits the number of units that can be rented to no more than 10%. And that concludes the report. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions from the board?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do have a question.
Yes.
So, Michael, just this plaza area, and this may be more appropriate for the applicant, so just punt it if you want to, but it's required for the fire apparatus turnaround. Is it grass or is it all, it looks like all pavers? Can you, I've never seen something like that in the middle of, can you help me?
So it's a creative way to address the fire requirements, fire marshal requirements, as well as to provide an amenities space or open space within the development. I don't know the exact material. Of course, the applicant is here and probably could respond to that a little bit better than me. It looks like it's pavers, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, we'll get, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Michael, the Old Milton Parkway side, we're talking there's going to be a wall along there where the 15-foot setback's going to be?
Yeah, so there is So the property does have some topography on it. You can
Correct.
see from about this point here is that this dark line here represents the wall, and it kind of wraps around here, and then you see a wall here. So that wall will be facing Old Milton Parkway. That's why we have that condition. to
And
make
it's
sure-
probably 3, 4 feet high?
I don't
ish.
know if the applicant has provided the height of the wall. The applicant will probably have a better idea of the overall height. I didn't show this. So with some changes to the conditions that the applicant proposed, they did provide a landscape plan showing the streetscape along Old Milton Parkway. And you can see the wall a little bit better here with this dark line. There's a call out here, Commissioner Aiken, that says 3 to 4 foot granite wall. And then the same call out is on
Same
this
thing
wall.
there. I mean, my concern is it's close to Old Milton Parkway, but a 3-foot wall, 4-foot wall is a mitigating factor.
Yes, it's similarly placed to the wall that they have at east of Main.
Right, okay. Thank you, Mike.
Any other questions?
Well, I have a quick question on the markups that the applicant gave. How do you want to address those? Do you want to let the applicant, do you want to do it now?
What I would say is, I'll let the applicant address their markups, but what I would say is we did send the applicant markups yesterday, late afternoon, and then there were, I believe, about 4 conditions that I thought that staff and the applicant could get on board with. And so they made some additional changes last night, and this morning we sent you new changes, which I believe you should all have a hard copy in front of you. We were okay with all of the requested changes from the applicant, except on condition 10, we would like a little bit more time to get some better changes to that. That's the condition that requires the 20-foot building setback and landscape strip. The applicant can provide that along most of the frontage. It's on the far west side where it pinches down, where they probably need a little bit of reduction in that area.
Okay.
So 10 we would like to stay as staff is proposing. Everything else, we are okay with the other changes.
Could you put the site plan back up a minute? And then, did you say that there's only one section when they're proposing to allow on-street parking? Did I hear that, or am I wrong on that?
No, there's some guest parking here. There's no on-street parking along Old Milton Parkway or along their alley.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I have a couple, but you can go first.
All right, so just really quick, that landscape plan that you quickly showed, that wasn't in our pre-packet. Is that in anywhere? Because I think some of what they're showing as far as the park was some added questions I had hoped that the developer would, or applicant would address. Will this be part of the conditions? Did you reference that in the conditions? Like this is
So
what we're
we
hoping to
did-
see?
Yeah, we did not reference this landscape plan. We just received this landscape plan when they sent over their initial markups to the
Okay.
changes. So we sent that over with their markups yesterday evening. And the applicant had made some changes to the conditions that specifically reference these 2 plans.
Okay.
And so that's why it wasn't in your packet.
Okay.
But we did send it over. So just so I show everything that's here. So this is the Old Milton Parkway streetscape. And this comes all the way to the western end. This is that fire truck turnaround here. And then this is the shared amenity space. So these are these 20-foot wide units that front on this shared amenity space with Park Walk 1 to the north. And the applicant in their markups reference both of these plans.
I have actually probably 3 questions. One has to do with access. Is there only one access in and out?
I'm sorry, what was the last part of that, the access?
The access is on the one, in and out.
Yes, this is the only proposed access.
Okay. And the next question is on density. Apart from the fact that I noticed that Thompson Street Flats, we approved a 10 units per acre. This is 9.7. What is the justification for recommending approval for such a high density, apart from, we have precedent?
Yeah, there is precedent from it, but just, I think, location. So this is at a major entrance into the downtown. It is not in the what's called the downtown core or central business district, but it is right immediately adjacent to it, and it is the entrance into the downtown. We do believe that the applicant, the justification is that the applicant has provided the increase in amenity space or open space that's required with that density increase, so they've increased that proportionally. So those are the reasons why we were supporting that density increase.
And with respect to the fire truck turnaround, and I'm assuming the design accommodates a fire truck going around and out. Has the fire department looked at that?
Yes, this is a plan. The fire marshal is part of the review, and they will have some standards of whatever that material is that they use. Will have to allow for a fire truck to turn around on it. There's a certain weight that it will have to meet.
And the turn radius?
And yeah, they have reviewed that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's it for now. Any other questions? No, go ahead.
So will that apply to school buses too? Or I guess it could accommodate any kind of turnaround there.
I suspect that the school board, we do send these requests to the school board, but that's more of getting feedback on the amount of school-age children that could be generated from this location. I'm not sure that they send it to make sure that a school bus can turn around there. I assume that a school bus doesn't weigh as much as a fire truck, so it should be able to handle a school bus. Radius may be different.
All right, we're going to ask the applicant to come forward and make a presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. My name's Alex Brock.
Hold on.
Can you press
All right, I'll start over. Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. My name's Alex Brock with Smith Gambrell Russell. Office address is 1105 West Peachtree Street, Atlanta, Georgia. I'm the land use attorney here representing the applicant Providence Group of Georgia, and with me tonight I have several members of the Providence Group. I'm going to briefly touch on some of the zoning aspects of the application and then turn over the presentation to Warren Jolly of the Providence Group to speak more in depth about the development itself. As Mr. Woodman mentioned, we are requesting a rezoning of the property to downtown live work, a comp plan amendment, conditional use permit to increase the density above 8 units per acre, and 3 concurrent variances to allow the 34-unit townhome development. The property is located in an area of just outside the downtown core that has experienced a high number of residential growth in recent years. A lot of this is due to its proximity to the amenities, restaurants, and attractions that the downtown core has to offer. And that has attracted a large amount of demand for high-quality residential growth. This can be seen along the adjacent streets, particularly Thompson Street, just north of the subject property, including the Park Walk development, which is directly north of the subject property, which the Providence Group is currently developing. This development was granted as similar rezoning to downtown live work and a conditional use permit to increase the density above 8 units per acre for that residential development. The subject property's development is currently limited by its zoning, which envisions the development of 2 office buildings, approximately 52,000 square feet in area, along with structured parking. And on the western side of the property, zone C2 for commercial development. I believe that was zone 4, or envisioned as part of a Eckerd drugstore.
Excuse me, are we supposed to have something on the screen? I see the audience looking at the big screen.
We do not. It's,
Oh, is it
I
looking
think they're
at
looking
you?
at my bald spot.
Okay, our screens are clear, nothing on. Sorry.
So we will have a presentation when Mr. Jolly gets up here to speak about the development, but fortunately, I'm stuck with the boring attorney portion.
That's fine, well, listen.
The zoning of the property, as I noted, it was rezoned in 2018 for office development, approximately 52,000 square feet of office. Since that time, since 2018, and particularly since the COVID pandemic, the demand for office has plummeted, is taking a drastic decline, and it's unlikely that the subject property would ever be developed in conformance with what was envisioned under the 2018 zoning. Instead, what we are now proposing is an upscale residential development that is consistent with the surrounding developments, densities, and zonings, and it brings it in conformance with the other residential in the area. In addition, Providence Group is developer of the Park Walk 1, which is directly north of the property, which allows some synergy between the two developments that would not be offered if it was two separate developers building each project. So at this point, I will turn it over to Mr. Warren Jolly with Providence Group to give his presentation on the development itself.
Mr. Chairman, members of the council, I'm Warren Jolly with the Providence Group. Again, appreciate your time tonight. We worked a while on this plan. This is not the first rendering that we've done with staff. What brought us to this property is that we did not zone the property behind it, which is on Thompson Street. It was brought before you guys, I think, over a year ago, and we ended up purchasing that property, which is Park Walk, what we're calling it, which is under development now on Thompson Street, and it actually backs up to this property. So anytime we are neighbors, we want to find out what's going on with their neighbor. We realized that property was zoned office, and some of it was zoned commercial for a drugstore and a structured parking lot. And so we ended up approaching the owners of that, which some of them were common ownership of the piece we bought, to try to put the properties together. One's already under development, one's already zoned, and then come here and zone this one. So that's what we've done. So the first layout you see in front of you right now is what the first site plan was. And the biggest issue between some of the issues, this entranceway back to this back corner right here, lot 34 in the corner, there's 18 foot of grade change from that road. And so that's part of the reason why that front wall along the frontage of units 1 through 4 went from 3 to 4 feet to help break that grade. Plus, when you elevate units, they obviously look better. You can landscape them with creeping fig or in like one on East Main and look very great. But this property has some topo issues. What also helps raising that and putting the wall here is we have our detention pond. The water, we can't really control where the drainage goes. It goes to this corner of the left side of the entranceway. So we're able to raise the side up a little bit, and that's when the other wall wraps around to get that volume in the detention pond, and it ties into the pipe here. A huge benefit of this property, which is uncharacteristic anywhere we go or in Alpharetta, is that there is no power lines on this side of the property. So these streetscapes and these tree planting plans, we've upgraded, and as the prior zoning, bigger trees, so you can really take benefit. Obviously, if you're familiar, if you've got power lines, you can't plant trees under the power lines. So that's good about this site. We don't have any power lines, so this can really have an awesome streetscape. But on this first layout that we did, these bigger units, they're pretty substantial. They're 33 by 60. They're 3,000 feet. They're two-story townhomes. And we built these projects, as they mentioned, called Alexandria. We built it on Lenox Road in 1999 to 2002. We had Warwick Dunn, Dominic Wilkins, Sarah Blankley, all buying these type of communities. And Kathy's always tried to figure out where we could build these, because he always calls them the Alexandria units. And this is a perfect place because they're low, they're 2 stories, even though we've got the wall. And I'll show you what the rendering looks like in a minute. But they're big footprints. But in most of the townhomes that are built in Alpharetta, we built a lot of them, have not been able to benefit having 2-story living with a rear entry garage and a little patio in the rear. They also have an elevator in them. And then the ones that are in the back are very similar, more typical what we built before. But the site plan I'm showing you right here, if you look, it had a hammerhead at the end of the street that met the fire turnaround. And we met with staff on this first plan, and these units, 13 through 18, then would back up to the Publix pond, so to speak. And there was no really way to back those up or to front them how they would look. Then also staff had a concern with this dead-end alley on Old Milton. And there's a decel lane that is the right turn lane that goes up Haynes Bridge. So they were worried about how that hammerhead would look and how we would landscape it. So some of the conversation said, while we redid this plan, then I'll show you the new plan, is that we widened this and then made this a focal point, a connectivity point from Old Milton up through our site and up to these 2 protected green areas, the tree save areas, one being in this development and one being in Park Walk 1, and then tying the linear distance between our units in this development facing the ones that are already zoned in Park 1, a big landscape area before a green area that's landscape. So it really, to me, it improves both sides of the community. And that's why the plan changed, and that's why you want to move that, just click it. So that's why we end up changing the site plan and made this, that area that you're asking about would be brick pavers. They have to be designed for, fire turnaround, there's certain guidelines. But that's more of a connecting point that goes right into that area of the green space and ties into that Park Walk 1 green space. And those are really the best area of good specimen trees that we're able to save, that we're going to be able to be good, and they're in great gatherings. So we ended up, I think, worked that out, and then that actually took away the hammerhead possibility on Old Milton and having more of a plaza than a road. And then we added another building of these Alexandria units, and then we turned the other building facing Park Walk 1 all the way down. So you have 3 buildings, 15 through 28, that are facing these other ones that they're facing each other with a common landscape with parks in the middle, which I think will really be neat. Now, one of the other things to mention is 15 through 28, they're 10 feet drop. So what I mean by that is that from the back, they're 3 stories. From the front, they're 2 stories. And so we had to make the grade change up, and that actually worked out well. And then 30 through 34, the ones that are front entry, were a requirement from the condo association. We met with the association president and some of the neighbors, and they did not want to engage these units toward this other common space, which was their private common space. And so we backed those units up there, and that's why they're front entries. And we've done this in some other communities, so those front the other way. So pretty much on the site plan, so it's not like, one of the things, if we went to the old site plan, we could have kept the 20 feet and 20 feet, building setback and landscape strip. This plan, because we have like 13 and 14 that pin it down, I think the setback is about 15 feet. And then once you get to like 12, it gets back to 20 feet. And then if you look at the average going all the way down, we'd be over 20 feet. Now, the requirement for the landscape strip is only 10 feet, but staff's asked for 20 feet, and they've asked for other, but the zoning code only is required 10. So we think we can work that condition 10 out. And basically, we just want the buildings to be able to set where they are, and we think the tree plantings and stuff will be adequate, whatever we call it. We would plan the buildings to sit. And we'll show you what the landscape plan works. So real quick, this is the site plan again. You see the orange units are the two-story big Alexander units. The blue units are buried in the bank. You can see more of the landscaping here. The red unit is the front unit building. Here are the Alexander townhomes. So you can see this picture in the left corner. You've got like a side porch, and then you've got a Charleston side porch with a door, and they kind of rotate. Remember, these are built 1999, 2001. Obviously, the architecture of all the product I'm showing you are built in different times. The brick colors and everything will match. We have to go to DRB. But you'll see this one here, this white one at the bottom with the side porch. And then it's got like a little plaza off the side of it. And so it's kind of like a Charleston side porch. They really work out well. Then these are the ones that are in the bank that are buried. These fronts will be facing the Park Walk 1 units, and this is the front building that was in the front. So I'll zoom out there quick. So real quick, the detention pond is in this front corner. So we've got a landscape amenity in the front. These trees are spaced at 35 feet, a center 6-inch trees. Code's 50 feet, normally a 4-inch tree. But we agree with staff to upgrade that. Here's again, the further down as you go, you can see a lot of green space. This wall goes from 0 to 4 feet and around. Obviously, when you look at these walls, the houses would look good at that elevated position rather than being too high or too low. And then this is the common landscape strip between Park Walk 1 units and the new units that we're proposing, which is, to me, far better than what the situation is that we could have now. Again, this is just a location, getting the conditions. We're in agreement with Michael and the staff on the conditions. We do agree. I think we're in the same agreement on number 10. It's just how we word it. And then this is what a rendering looks like, the actual photo of the end unit coming in the entranceway. So this unit here will be on the left side. The doors are actually on the side, so the end unit. So this would be like number 5 on the site plan. Let me look at it. Be number 5 on the plan, and you'll see the side door is on the side of the entranceway, same as 4. And then you'll see the rotation of a Charleston side porch unit, and then another unit that faces front porch, and then a Charleston side porch. This is the planting plan with a 4-foot wall with a fence and the tree planting along the frontage. And so these are the exact units that would go there from a perspective. And like I said, they're really gorgeous units. They really will do really well. So if there's any questions, I'm available. If not, we'll have any question for rebuttal.
I have a quick question. On the shared amenity space, are you going to have like one giant homeowners association? Or are you thinking 2 homeowners? How's
Yeah,
that?
like when we did East on Main 1, and then we did the back part, we put them in the same association.
Okay.
So we would put plating, it would be different timing, but we would put all this in the same association.
Okay, thank you.
Especially because also, all our communities that we've done, all the exteriors of the townhomes are maintained in the HOA, and also all the landscaping is maintained in the HOA. So you wouldn't want 2 HOAs, that common strip. Well, who's cutting it this week, who's cutting that week? So it'd all be maintained by one HOA.
I do have a quick question on the additional markup you did on number 23. Trees shall not be required between the driveways of unit 15 and 28. I understand what you're trying to accomplish there, but, I actually posed this to Michael. Between 23 and 24, there's a gap in the buildings. So I do think we'd want to clear up that, just to make sure. I do think we want trees there, right?
Well, so between, what number was it again?
23 to 24.
So you have a 20-foot wide unit, and you have a 16, 18-foot driveway. And so, yeah, the area that you're talking about there is no problem. Normally, in planning, in our landscape plan, they want us to try to put trees normally between the units. And it's very hard when you have a, yeah. So this whole strip, of landscape in between the buildings and this area by the mail kiosk, those are plenty of areas to plant trees. We're just talking about between the driveways of those units. That maybe just need to be worded. And when when you mentioned this bus stop, we did mention the MARTA bus stop. So imagine, I don't know, if there's a school bus stop, they may use the same stop because once you put a MARTA stop there.
How wide are units 15 through 28? These are the 2,100 square feet.
Yes, sir.
How wide are they?
15 through 28 are 20 feet wide, so they're same width as Townsend Thompson that we're building right now.
A question on on Old Milton Parkway. There's a couple of very large oak trees that are facing on Old Milton. What's going to be the status of those?
If you look at the tree has a landscape plan, so we've done an arbor study. We've given it to David Sostak and gone through. Most of these trees are in fair or poor condition, and so the trees that are X'd out on the plan that they have would be removed. Most of the trees that will be being saved are all in that clump of trees that are right there on top of the hill, and they're grouping. And they've looked at it and gone through it, and our arborist has went through it, and you've got the same results of these trees even from the other zoning with the office building would be the same situation. They looked at the trees, the same situation.
What is the expected price point?
Oh, don't tell me that. I hate to tell you, but things are not getting any cheaper. So at Townsend Thompson, we're pretty much at 900 to $1.1 million. So the blue units would be probably, right around $1 million. The red units would probably be $1.1 million to $1.3 million, and the orange units would probably be $1.3 million to $1.6 million.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, we're going to open this meeting for public comments.
Thank you.
You have some time for rebuttal after the public comment. Anyone would like to speak in favor of this application, please come forward. Seeing none, anyone in opposition, please come forward. Please come forward.
Please state your name and address.
Carla Shaw, 2610 Traywick Chase. Not necessarily opposition. I think they've presented a very good, well-thought-out plan and have tried to be very sensitive to saving trees and to putting in landscaping that would be very appropriate for downtown. But related to the last question about the 2 oak trees and that some of the specimen trees are in a poor condition, I would like to request that the applicant, in replacing trees, be requested to replace trees in kind. I can't really tell the trees in this picture whether they're mature or not mature. They certainly don't look like large oak trees. So my request would be that they would be required to replace trees that are more in kind, oak trees more in keeping with the landscaping around downtown. That would be my request. Directly related to concern about the removal of trees around downtown and not replacing them with trees in kind. So that would be my comment. And I'd like the commission to please consider that.
Thank you so much for your comment. Anyone else? All right. No further questions. I close public comments. Do you have anything else you'd like to add before I turn these over to the board?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of council. So we're planting 6-inch trees along the frontage, which are pretty substantial trees. And they would be basically what the staff would agree to, and the type of trees. And your arborist does a very good job of making you plant trees and make the ordinance. And just so you know, I mean, the trees that we're saving in the planting area, if you were to look at the required amount of trees to be saved in that area, we're making almost like 75 to 80% of the required tree recompense in that area that we're saving the trees, if you count all the inches up. So, but we've gone through the trees with great detail with your staff and the arborists. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anytime we have opportunity to add trees, we need to do that and preserve the ones we already have. I would turn this over to the board for discussion and our motion. Who would like to start?
Can I ask one quick question to Michael?
You can ask it during discussion, that's fine.
Thank you. This really doesn't have anything to do with the applicant or the application, but, you know, we're looking at this beautiful picture of all the landscaping all the way up to the beautiful retention pond, and I know it's not a part of this application, but is there any plans to do something with this retention pond, because it is on a corner of our city and it's very visible, and it will be very visible once this is done?
So that detention pond is
I know.
Public's detention pond. They actually did just come through there and clean it up quite a bit. I know one question that I was asked before is, can we make them get rid of the chain link fence? That's not something that we can force. We can certainly reach out to Publix. We have some contacts, and we can see if we can encourage them to do some additional screening or change out the fencing. But I don't know that it's anything that we can require them to do. But it certainly looks a lot better than the way that it had been left for the last several years.
Well, it might
and
look
they've
better,
cleaned-
but it's not going to look great compared to Mr. Jolly's
Yes.
landscaping. So,
Understood.
just
Hear
a
you,
comment.
and we'll talk to them.
Okay.
It is true, detention ponds can be very unsightly, and definitely that one is. And the maintenance thereof is important, of course, and to make it, nicely landscaped, especially as, this is right at the intersection of a major road and very nice development, and then you have this detention pond right there. It just doesn't look good. I wish there was some type of screening on one side of it, so see what you can do with Publix and, exactly, something that can make it a little bit more attractive for that major point.
Mike, I do have one. On number 10, what's the final outcome on that? Is that to leave it as minimum 15 building setback and 10, or is it minimum 20 building setback and 10?
So our recommendation to Planning Commission would be to leave as staff proposed, which would be minimum 20-foot building setback in landscape strip for now.
Go ahead.
Michael, I do have two questions for you on, and this is, I think, my confusion. I apologize, because I did do my homework and did a site visit today. On number 16, it's referencing this hardscape plan 4.8. And I apologize, but was that the one that was shown? It went so fast, I couldn't see the date reference on the corner. Was that the one that was shown with all the green? Okay, so that I missed in the pre-read, so I apologize. So that was very helpful, and I just think before, the next step, just make sure that is part of that, because I did not get to see this in my packet, so that may have been my miss, I apologize. But that closed a lot of the gaps there. No, so yeah, none of us had seen that.
Yeah.
So that's.
This was not part of the packet. It
Yeah.
came after with the applicant's markups.
So I think this was very helpful to understand the wall, the size trees. I couldn't understand what the Parker Park was, and clearly the fire truck roundabout still will be interesting. But then the other question I have for you, Michael, is on number 23, and maybe this is just me being overly concerned. I know what the intent of that wording is, the trees required from the driveways, but I do think on the units that have separation, we want to allow trees between those units. So I don't want the inference to be that, but that's just maybe me.
Maybe what you would do is on condition number 23, you add on to the end of the sentence, it could say, trees shall not be required between the driveways of units 15 through 28, but not between buildings. But there shall be trees between buildings. Because the idea is they have such a narrow area
No,
between the actual
I
driveways. But there is
completely agree with
space.
that, but I
Yeah.
do, where there are the gaps in the building structures, I do want that allowance, so I don't want to be any gray area.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Just want to make a few observations during these discussions. I always hesitate, and I'm concerned usually when we are amending the comprehensive master land use plan for the city, because we deliberately go through the planning process and come up with what we believe we want the city to look like sometimes in the future. And we do recognize that sometimes we are not perfect. There are some gaps that we need to fill in, make some modifications over time, and we have to be very careful when we do that. The other observation I'd like to make is that as we bring these applications before the board and city council, there are times when I believe we are looking at it in a moment in time instead of a long-term vision in terms of what is happening now. Yes, after COVID, there is less demand for office and more demand for housing. It's true that housing has become very unaffordable, and we want to make sure that we encourage people to own their own homes or townhomes or condominiums and have a good mix, which the applicant has done that. However, as far as I'm concerned with respect to applications like this, is not to always talk about, we don't need any more office spaces or commercial facilities now. Put it in the larger context of what we expect to happen over the next 5, 10, 15 years. And I'm not suggesting by any means, staff, that you're not doing that. I'm just admonishing us as a city to be looking ahead instead of a moment in time. The other concern ahead is the density. I was asking the question regarding what is justification. Anytime we approve something, and it happens quite often, I've been in the board for 15 years now, believe it or not, it comes back to us as president. We did this here, we did that there. So we have to be very careful what we do, and we tend to do more the next time around. So with that in mind, I'm not opposed to the application. I think it's a very nicely well done, thought out plan. It fits exactly with the long-term vision of mixed use. I've said before that if you want to concentrate high density, make it closer to the downtown area. I think we have enough supporting uses here for walkability, livability. We have Avalon, we have the city center, we have other things that would support that type of residential growth and development. The only mention, I think I mentioned this before, is to see what we can do about this pond right at a major intersection in the middle of the city next to a very nice residential development. We need to really think through that, see what we can do. That's all I have to say for now.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a couple comments. And it ties into one point that a couple of us have mentioned, the comprehensive land use plan amendment. In my opinion, that plan needs to be amended because right now we have an abandoned funeral home at the gateway to our city, and that doesn't send a good vibe when you're coming into downtown Alpharetta to see an abandoned funeral home. And if we don't do anything here, the current zoning would allow a drugstore and structured parking to go there. So I completely agree if you drive through Alpharetta and you look, it could be Rose Downtown, East of Main, the Atlee, Towns on Thompson, Maxwell. This is going to be a beautiful product, I think. And I think for the gateway to our city, having that old Charleston look right there on Old Milton, slightly higher density, but complementary with the version 1 subdivision that's to the north, I think it works. And then finally, I think being consistent with the 2040 comprehensive plan and the downtown master plan are important. So I'm fully in support of the project.
So the funeral home is, how long has this been abandoned? The funeral home? I didn't hear the answer. A while? Okay. More than 5 years, yeah. There was an application there a while back about that funeral home.
I drive by there just about every day. Drove around the abandoned funeral home today, and it kind of gave me the creeps a little bit, but for what that's worth.
I definitely support the plan. Anytime that we can trade office for residential is a good thing. And I understand the master plan, and because I was part of the folks who actually put it together originally. And one thing about where Old Milton Parkway is, and when we discussed the existence of Avalon back in 2012, was this is the gateway to our city. And it truly is. I'm using a word that we used back then. Where we can have something that looks like this to the gateway of our city, as opposed to having office buildings and traffic, because let me tell you, this is not going to be a traffic getter. 37 single-family homes, or attached single-family homes, is going to be a lot better than office buildings that were there. At the time when we approved it, you know, it was something, you got to remember, back then, City Center really didn't exist, and Avalon was just getting going, actually just starting. And, you know, what we have seen now and where we can put something like this for housing, and listen, the prices of our houses in Alpharetta are because of people like Mr. Jolly and the rest of the developers who have stayed with our plan, and Ms. Cook's department has kept us pretty well in check. So, and ma'am, I want to make one other comment, being someone who's been involved with the city for years. We have one of the toughest tree recompense for developers, builders, anywhere in the state. And that's why our city looks like it does. That's why we have the trees that we have. So I feel very confident that we'll make sure that happens for you. I agree, those oak trees have been here since I grew up here. And I know it'll be taken care of. Can I make a motion?
Very well said.
Can I make a motion? Go ahead.
Yeah, can make a motion.
I make a motion to approve CLUP 24-02-Z-2407 /C-U-24-04/V-24-07 Park Walk 2 with staff's conditions and the addition of the developer's condition number 10 as is, and 23 and 24.
Wait, just clarifying, are you taking the red line markups that we have in front of us?
Yes, ma'am.
So you leaving number 10 as staff has written?
No, ma'am. I want to go to the developers. Now that I know that the wall's going to be there, my biggest concern with the wall is that some car goes off Old Milton Parkway and ends up in someone's backyard. I mean, I definitely, when I first read it, not knowing the topo and how they were going to do it, I don't disagree with you, but I would go with I mean, you guys can make an amendment to it, but I think that the wall more than supports the lower setback.
Well, in condition number 23, is it as Michael stated, or is it the developer?
So
With the tree.
That wasn't moved, but that should,
I'm still confused. You're accepting all of the red lines?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'd like to propose a friendly amendment. On number 23, Michael, tell me if you don't like the way I've done this. Trees shall not be required between the driveways of units 15 through 18, 19 through 20, and 24 through 28. So that's the blocks. So the gaps between them, we can look at a tree plan and figure that out.
I accept it.
Thank you.
Is there a second? Are you second?
Second.
All right, a motion has been made and properly seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries. It goes before council on October the 29th. And council will make the final decision. All right. The next item on the agenda is Z24-06/PH-24-06, V-2406-55 Canton. Michael?
So is this like supposed to be green when it's off? Yes.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. The next item before you is a request for rezoning.
You need to turn yours on.
Parking in lieu fees and variances to allow for the construction of a mixed-use building with 36 for-sale condominium units and 7,000 square foot of restaurant space on 1.02 acres in the downtown. Rezoning is requested from C2 General Commercial to DTC Downtown Core, and parking in lieu fees are requested for 5 parking spaces. There's also variances to increase the maximum building footprint of the building, as well as a variance to allow the full complement of tandem parking spaces to count toward the city's minimum parking requirements. I have the location map on the overhead. The property is located at 32, 38, and 44 Old Canton Street. It's the southeast corner of Canton Street and Old Canton Street. The proposed density of this development is just over 35 units per acre. There's a variance request to increase the max building footprint. The DTC zoning district has a max of 20,000 square feet. This building is 28,048 square feet. We did look in this area. This area is the central business district or downtown core of downtown. And Teasley Place has a building footprint of 50,000 square foot for comparison. Alpharetta Lofts, just north of Teasley, has a building footprint of 30,000 square feet. And then the Hamilton Hotel is about 40,000 square feet. Also, as when I show you the applicant's renderings of the building, they have used offsets and change in exterior building material to break up the massing of the building. The other variance was to allow the full complement of tandem parking spaces. So there's 18 tandem parking spaces depicted in the underground parking deck of the building. Our code would only count one of each 2 tandem spaces, so they would only count half of those toward meeting the minimum parking requirements. We have had a request in the North Point area previously for tandem parking spaces. That variance request was not approved, and we don't have any variances that have been approved for to allow the full complement of tandem parking to count. So we do allow tandem parking, it's just that the code only counts half. Also looking at the proposed density, this zoning district, downtown core, DTC, does not have a max density. And so the applicant's density of about 35 units per acre is similar to Alpharetta Lofts. Specifically, Teasley Place has a higher density, but it's most like Alpharetta Lofts. Also noted the similarities between this development and Alpharetta Lofts. Alpharetta Lofts is on about 1 acre, similar to this property. It also was approved for 36 for-sale condominium units, and they have about 6,000 square feet of restaurant and retail space. They have less parking at the lofts. There's a total of 86 parking spaces at Alpharetta Lofts, and they do have tandem parking within their structured deck. Their tandem parking was allowed, the full complement was allowed to count. This is a code change related to tandem parking that we put in the code just a few years ago. So after Alpharetta Lofts was approved. So this is the applicant's site plan. Again, it's a 4-story mixed-use building. This is the building here. The access to the building, vehicular access, is from the old Canton Street side. So the building is really oriented at Canton Street. This is about a 1/4 acre property that the city purchased for a future park. We also were able to secure a pedestrian access through this property. So there would be a future pedestrian access. So if you're on Old Canton Street or if you're on Canton Street, you can cut through here instead of having to take the whole block around. I'll talk about those details here in just a few. Right now, the on-street parking on Canton Street is delineated with striping on the road. So there are conditions in this that would require planters planted with street trees to be added along Canton Street to define the on-street parallel parking. So the parallel parking will stay, it just will be better defined with street trees and planters. The 8-foot brick sidewalk will remain. And then the existing trees along Canton Street will be removed and be replaced with American elms to match the other side of the street in front of Teasley Place. The sidewalk on Old Canton Street will be extended to the east property line, so it ends approximately here. They'll extend that sidewalk. They're also depicting the addition of 6 on-street parallel parking spaces along Old Canton Street. And that streetscape matches what was developed behind the Hamilton Hotel. This development requires 101 parking spaces. The applicant's site plan, this is the parking deck, so this is showing the lower level of this building, the below-grade parking deck. There are 82 parking spaces in that structured parking deck. There are a total of 14 on-street parallel parking spaces on both Canton Street and proposed on Old Canton Street. That brings the total parking to 96 parking spaces. So there's a shortfall of 5 parking spaces, of which they're asking for parking in lieu fees for those. As I mentioned, within the parking deck, there are some tandem parking. The applicant in an initial site plan started out with about 36 total tandem parking spaces. They were able to cut that in half to 18. So the yellow highlighted area highlights the tandem parking spaces that are proposed here. Again, there's 18 spaces there. Our code would only count half of those, so 9. All the parking within the structured parking deck will be dedicated to residents and guests of the condominium units above. Site plan depicts approximately 32.2% open space, of which 17.65% open space is required, so they exceed our open space requirements nearly double. They are showing a pool amenity area here for the condominium residents. There's also outdoor seating areas, so the first floor of the building will have the 2 restaurant spaces, so there's a restaurant space that would front on this future park. There's also a restaurant space in the first floor of the building here, catty corner from the Georgian development. The outdoor seating areas for those restaurant spaces count toward amenity space as well. There are no specimen trees identified on the property, and there are no tree saves shown. There are 5 trees listed in the applicant's arborist assessment. They're all shown in poor condition. When Teasley Place was being developed, there was construction staging that occurred on this property. There were some impacts to the existing trees on the property, which is why there is an agreement on the property that allowed us to secure those pedestrian easements through the property. That agreement also requires that a 10-inch caliber tree be planted on the property. Stormwater management will be addressed in an off-site pond behind the Georgian, so to the north and west of this property. There are also some underground vaults depicted here under the outdoor seating at this plaza on the north side of the development. So this is the applicant's, these are the applicant's renderings that they are proposing. So we are at the corner of Milton Avenue and Canton Street looking north at the building. This is that future city park at the corner. As you can see, looking at the building from this angle, the building is brick material. This is looking at that same corner of the building, and we're progressing north up Canton Street. We're now looking southward towards Milton Avenue at the northern portion of the building, which is now cast stone and stone. So again, they use you can see there's an offset in the building here. It's meant to make the building look like 2 buildings instead of 1 to offset that, to address the variance for the maximum building footprint. This is looking at the building from Canton and Old Canton Street. This is looking from the Georgian, catty corner across Canton Street, looking at the northern portion of the building. And this is at the sidewalk level of the building, just showing you the stone base of the building with the brick above. This is across from Nest Cafe. And this is along Canton Street. The applicant's architect indicates that the style is Italianate. As I mentioned, brick, cast stone, and stone is being used. The top 3 floors of the building will be for the for sale condominium units. They consist of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. And we did show the renderings to the downtown consultant, and believes that they do comply with the design regulations in the downtown. So this rendering is meant to depict the off-site improvements. So as I mentioned, this is the future city park, and then these pedestrian easements, access easements through here. So as if this is approved, the developer will have impact fees associated with this development. And the city does allow for, in exchange for impact fees, you can do improvements, such as to the pedestrian alley, as well as to the city park. And so that's the plan here, is that in conjunction with this development, the developer will make improvements to the alley as well as the park. We did do an initial calculation of the applicant's impact fee credits, and they're about $250,000. So our code in the downtown does allow for, if you cannot meet your parking requirements, you can either request parking in lieu fees or a parking special exception. So the applicant here has a shortfall of 5 parking spaces. And so they are asking for parking in lieu fees for 5 spaces. That would be based on the rate sheet in the code for parking in lieu fee. That would be a lump sum payment to the city of $22,500. That goes into a downtown parking fund to fund future parking needs in the downtown. These parking in lieu fees have been approved at a few locations in the downtown, at 44 Milton Avenue, 55 and 61 Roswell Street, the development there, at Alpharetta Lofts, I think was one of the first ones, as well as the Coro building at the corner of Old Roswell Street and Roswell Street, as well as at 75 and 91 Roswell Street. That's the newest development that was approved for the parking in lieu fees. That's just north of Pure on Roswell Street. In conjunction with this request, as I mentioned earlier, there is a variance to allow that full complement of the tandem parking spaces. We are not supporting that variance request, and we'll get into, as I go through the review criteria for the variance for that. I will explain the reasons why we're not supporting that variance request. So if that variance was not approved, there would be a shortfall of 9 additional parking spaces in addition to the 5 that they were requesting parking in lieu fees for. So we are recommending denial of that variance request, which would bump up the lump sum payment to the city of parking in lieu fees for a total of 14 parking spaces to $94,500. Of course, when we're looking at requests for parking in lieu fees, we want to make sure that this request makes sense. So are there available public parking facilities in the area that actually have parking availability or capacity? And so the Milton Avenue parking deck, as well as the old Roswell Street parking lot, are the nearest to the applicant's property. And we did do a downtown parking study, and it does show that the Milton Avenue parking deck has the greatest available capacity of available parking. Also, the Roswell Street city parking lot, while that's not the nearest parking lot to this property, it is within a decent walking distance, especially for employees. And so we do have some review criteria when looking at requests for parking in lieu fees. And again, the availability of parking in the downtown is one of those review criteria. We saw that the Milton Avenue parking deck is located within about 450 feet of the site. It has one of the lowest, or the lowest, peak utilizations of parking at 65% in the downtown. We also looked at the National Parking Association. They state that parking designers use maximum walking distance between 300 to 600 feet for retail customers and between 1,200 and 1,500 feet for employee parking. So that Milton Avenue parking deck with the most available capacity is within that maximum walking distance of retail customers. And then the Roswell Street surface parking lot is within that maximum distance for employees. One of the other criteria that we look at is, are there other means of transportation to this location? So we looked at MARTA bus route in the general vicinity, and there are 5 bus stops within approximately 1,000 feet of the subject site. And as I mentioned, we have had requests for parking in lieu fees approved in the downtown at those locations that I mentioned earlier. Of course, assessing the other review criteria related to the rezoning requests and variance requests, the proposal is consistent with the future land use designation of the property. We do not believe the proposal would adversely affect the existing use or usability of adjacent and nearby properties. They're similarly developed. As I mentioned, the Alpharetta Lofts is very similar to what the applicant is proposing on this property. We believe the request would reduce demand on transportation facilities. It would increase demand on parks, as this has residential units with it. However, Fulton County Schools did provide a report back and they anticipate 0 school-age children would be generated from this property. As it relates to the variance review criteria, the property certainly has an unusual shape. It's one of the exceptional conditions. There are some topography challenges on the property. It's got 2 road frontages on 2 sides of the property, as well as a city pedestrian alley frontage on the other 2 sides of the property. As it relates to the increase to the maximum building footprint, As I mentioned, the applicant has taken steps with the design of the building with offsets and exterior material changes in an effort to break up the massing of the building. We do not believe that some of these exceptional conditions on the property represent a hardship in support of the variance to allow the full complement of tandem parking to count. Now, we do think that the tandem parking will work in this particular instance. However, we are concerned about the precedent that it could set by approving the variance. We've not had a variance approved to allow the full complement of tandem parking to be approved. You know, at some other locations, we've seen requests for tandem parking where it's in a townhome or a detached unit. The concern would be that the owner of that unit then uses it for storage or a man cave or a craft room or some other use than a parking space. In this condition, I think there's a little bit less concern given that in a structured parking deck, the condo association can regulate how that parking is being used. However, again, because of the potential for setting a precedent, we're not supporting that variance. The applicant did their public notification notifying properties within 500 feet of the property. They indicated that they held a meeting with some residents in Teasley Place, and according to the applicant, the project was overall well received. This item was also shown to the public at the February 14th Community Zoning Information Meeting, and there were 2 public comments in support on the sign-in sheet. With that, staff is recommending approval of the applicant's request subject to 20 conditions, and I will go through those conditions. Condition 1 is the site plan specific condition rezoning the property to DTC downtown core and tying it to the latest site plan by AEC dated 4/3/24. Limits the property to no more than 36 for-sale condominium units and 7,000 square foot of restaurant use. Condition 2 addresses the architecture and materials that I showed you in the renderings. Condition 3 requires white lights be added to the top of the building to participate in the city's holiday lighting program. Condition 4 addresses the variance request to increase the maximum building footprint. Condition 5 addresses the tandem parking. So the recommendation, let me go back, the recommendation was to approve the applicant's request but deny the variance to allow the full complement of tandem parking to count towards minimum parking requirements. So there's an approval but denial of that variance request specific related to tandem parking. So condition 5 states tandem parking shall be developed as depicted on the site plan with 9 spaces counted toward the minimum parking requirements. Use of tandem parking spaces shall be limited to the residential units, and the spaces shall be clearly marked for each residential unit. We did send this request to our traffic consultant to get their feedback. While they did not believe that there was a hardship that was proven as it relates to the variance request, they did not have concern the use of the tandem parking space if they're assigned to the residential units. Condition 16 addresses foundation plantings around the edge of the building. Condition 7 addresses the improvement of the streetscape along Canton Street. I had provided some details about defining the on-street parking there and pulling out the existing trees and replacing with elms to match what's across the street. On condition 8, that addresses the old Canton Street streetscape with the addition of the on-street parking there, an extension of the sidewalk. Condition 9 addresses the pedestrian egress easement agreement that has a specific requirement that a minimum 10-inch caliper tree be planted on the property. 10 requires decorative pedestrian lighting throughout the development, maintained by the condominium association. 11, developer to improve the city pedestrian alley and park with hardscape and landscape materials similar to the images that it showed you. And so these are the images here that the applicant provided. This is Exhibit B that's referenced in condition 11. And this is just kind of this is focusing on the corner park. And then this is Exhibit A. So this is just an exhibit, this just is showing you the type of hardscape and landscape that we would like to see within that pedestrian alley. Of course, those improvements would be done in exchange for impact fee credits. Condition 12 ties the open space, ties them to the open space depicted on the site plan. 13, fences and walls visible from the public right-of-way or city-owned property shall be decorative. Fences shall be metal and walls shall be brick, stone, or similar material, shall be covered in creeping vines as approved by DRB. 14 requires that HVAC and similar equipment not be visible or screened from the public right-of-way or city-owned property. 15 requires garbage pickup from within the parking deck. 16 addresses the parking in lieu fees, so we are recommending denial of the tandem parking variance. So the lump sum parking in lieu fee would be for a total of 14 parking spaces with a fee of $94,500. That's due prior to the issuance of the building permit. 17, developer shall provide creative signage such as painted signs, blade signs, or perpendicular signs with final approval of DRB. 18, outside speakers and live music on the outdoor dining area shall not be permitted. The applicant did provide some markups, and I can address those separately. We do have a noise ordinance, and so we intended to remove condition 18 and just forgot to delete that before we issued the staff report. I think the noise ordinance takes care of that. Condition 19, there shall be no construction, traffic, parking, or staging on Canton Street. A construction staging plan shall be provided with the land disturbance permit with final approval by staff. I think we also had agreed and forgot to delete that first sentence in 19. It's near impossible to not allow them to stage along Canton Street during construction. There's just not enough room on Old Canton Street. We're in the downtown space is very limited. And then condition 20 does not limits the number of residential units that can be rented to no more than 10%. And that concludes the report. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you, Michael. One minor point on condition number 4. The size of the building is 28,048 square feet. The building size is 28,048 square feet. You refer to that as footprint. I'll just say the size of the building shall not exceed 28,048 feet, not the footprint of the building.
Condition for it says the maximum building footprint. It's the footprint that is tied to the maximum 20,000 square feet.
But the footprint is the bottom, not the square footage.
Correct. It's just the footprint of the building would be limited to 28,000 square feet, not the overall square footage of the building. We don't have
what is the total square footage of the building?
Oh, I don't know what the total square footage of the building is, but the applicant is here, probably will have some more information.
All right. With respect to the tandem parking, did you say it would work if it was assigned to specific units?
Did I say in the report that it is?
I thought you said if the tandem parking spaces were assigned to specific units, that would work.
Yeah, so everything within the structured parking deck will only be used for the condo units and their guests. So there'll be no restaurant parking within the structured parking deck. That will only be for residents there. And all the parking spaces will be assigned to specific units. And some of those units will have tandem parking spaces, and some will have regular parking spaces.
And we are discounting 9 of them. Of the tandem, we have 18 tandem, but we are not counting them as 9.
So we're only counting 9 towards meeting the minimum parking requirements, but there's actually 18 parking spaces there. They're just 18 tandem parking spaces.
So basically, they have 87 total, counted, lacking 14.
Say that again? Just think I lost,
You have 18 tandem, you're only counting 9 of them.
correct?
So the total parking you're counting is basically 87.
Correct. And then they're paying for the additional 14.
Just clarifying
Yes.
what I heard.
Yes, I'm sorry, I got confused for a second.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Michael, I do have a question on number 9. There were some markups provided. Did you want to clarify staff's opinion? Because I think it's confusing because there's an existing agreement requiring the 10-inch caliber.
Yeah, so the agreement is in favor of the city. And so this was an agreement that was worked out between the previous property owner and the city. This was the previous property owner was the developer of Teasley Place. And because there were some impacts to those trees, we came up with this agreement. We were able to get pedestrian easements for that pedestrian alley. And then we also had a requirement for the 10-inch caliper tree. The applicant is asking to change that one 10-inch caliper tree to 2 6-inch caliper trees. I did talk to the city arborist about that, and he actually prefers the smaller caliper tree. The survival rate is higher with the smaller caliper. The 6-inch is still above what we require for a tree recompense tree. So we would require 4-inch caliper tree if it's a recompense tree. And then if it's not a recompense tree and it's just, let's say, a landscape strip tree, it would be minimum 2-inch at planting.
Okay, and then real quick, because it does talk about this in the easement, well, I'm assuming it talks about it in the easement agreement. So the city park, the easement through, the long-term maintenance is going to be on, the park maintenance is the city's, right?
The maintenance of the park is the city's. I would have to go back to that easement agreement to see if there was specific information on maintenance to just verify
I think
that.
just do that before the
Yes.
next meeting. Thank you.
Got a question, Mr. Chairman.
Make sure, is your microphone on? I can't.
It is.
Okay, thanks.
You're good.
You're good, thanks.
No one's ever said they can't hear me. I usually try to whisper up here. My wife will get a kick out of that. On the topic of parking, and I'm embarrassed to admit that I kind of blew by this, but in my preparation, I've been so focused in the weeds on parking in lieu and tandem parking and Googling tandem parking and things like that, that I totally missed the big picture on parking. So I was going to ask if you could pull up Exhibit B that has the yellow, all the yellow. Yeah. So just high level, like if you were to ask me, Todd, where are the 101, where are the
96.
87 required parking spaces? I'm totally clueless about where they are, above ground, below ground, visible from the street, not visible from the street,
They're
gated.
They're below grade in the structured parking deck. This property, if you ever walk along Canton Street, it drops down pretty significantly from just off the sidewalk. So they will do a structured parking deck and then build, the 4 levels will be above that. If you look at the renderings, you can kind of see the grade change.
No, I got you.
Okay.
So they're all below grade. I thought I read something about the water table prevented, was it that it prevented more underground parking than desired, or any, I guess not any, right?
I believe that's what was stated in the applicant's application, that there was some issues with the water table. We do acknowledge that we know that during the construction of Teasley Place, they also had some problems. I'm not sure about Alpharetta Lofts, but I know at Teasley Place there were some issues with the water table as well.
Okay. Thank you, Michael.
May I ask a question as it relates to the tandem parking?
Sure.
So for each tandem parking space, there's the ability to put 2 vehicles in each space.
Correct.
However, the city is only counting that tandem space as 1 space
Correct.
per code requirements.
Correct.
And at this point, there's no precedent in any other project for counting a tandem space as 2 towards any requirements to this point.
Correct.
So in my mind, if this isn't a situation to allow that, based that it's a parking environment that's segregated specifically for residential repeat users, I don't see a situation where we would ever, because this would be the most ideal scenario to utilize a tandem space. Perhaps the only level up would be if you had valet parking that could then ensure that the space is totally being used as designed. I mean, at some point, it might be worth reviewing that with our code, because many cities allow that, from my experience in the parking industry.
Yeah, I think we've encountered some issues over at the Hamilton Hotel. So their parking deck is below the hotel. That is utilized by their valet service, and they actually stack their parking. But you know, it came to our attention that some of that equipment wasn't functioning for quite a while. So there's a lot of reasons why we were a little bit concerned with the tandem parking space, but I think that's a valid point that you made.
Yeah, because having a unit that has residents that have two vehicles, and they can coordinate it within their own household how they want to.
Sure.
You go in first, the second person always who leaves first for work is towards the outside. It's kind of an ideal environment if we were to ever consider allowing that variance.
And that's the question I was getting into, because if you have, like, you allow tandem parking on a driveway in an townhome, you can count the length of the driveway to accommodate two cars. But in this case, what I was drilling down to is if they are designated, only these units can use them, and they are marked, would that work? I'm not suggesting we do that, because people don't follow rules very well in a big development like this one. So I can see where we don't want to set a bad precedent, and I can see where it may not work. Enforcement becomes a challenge there, but there is no way, and this is probably a question to the applicant, that they can find an additional 14 spaces. Well, if it was 9, that was easier, or 5, sorry. 14 becomes a little more challenging to find, and it's inconvenient to expect residents to be parking somewhere away and then walking. Sometimes it's raining, they have groceries to bring, and I wouldn't want to be in that situation, to have to even walk a block. But I digress. No comment. Any other questions? All right, Michael, we will ask the applicant to make a presentation, and we'll probably have additional questions. You may want to turn one to the audience, because they look about the same.
Sorry.
Oh, you have extra, okay.
Which way we point? A couple to each. Okay. Go ahead. Let us know if you want us to turn any of those around. My name is Tim Vaccaro. I'm with Placemaker Design. We're the architects for the project at what will be addressed as 55 Canton Street. All the lots are currently addressed to Old Canton Street. We're excited at the opportunity, and basically what we're talking about here is the completion of the triangular block between Canton, Milton, and Old Canton Street There's 3 lots there existing that there's a house on one of them, but the other 2 lots remain undeveloped. So what we're proposing here is just to complete that block, add a signature building to the city of Alpharetta. And, our background, everybody involved in this project has a long history with Alpharetta. We were the architects for the project across the street, which is the same property owner at 10 Roswell, which is Fogoni Lions and Mini Olivia, which we just did some renovations to there. We were involved in the city center project, doing all the restaurant buildings out front. So the opportunity to continue to work in Alpharetta is really exciting to us, and especially to bring a signature building like what we're proposing for this project to light. We're asking for a rezoning because this property is one of the old zonings that never got changed over. So this is the original C2 zoning before all the downtown zonings were put in place. So we're merely asking to change the zoning to be in compliance with what the long-range plan wants this site to be. Our other challenge is, in order to properly develop the site, we understand there's a 20,000 square foot footprint limitation on the building, and what we're proposing is higher than that, but to address that and to try and take into account what the city is really trying to accomplish is we've broken this project up so it looks like 3 separate buildings. So you're not seeing a big, massive, singular building. It looks like 3 smaller buildings that were developed independently from each other. And to that point, we are still the smallest of the 3 other buildings that are around us, by a good bit in most cases. To walk you through some of the views of the project, these are just the same renderings that you see, but as discussed, we have and have been working with the city to, as we develop this project, to implement a new park over on the west side of downtown. So we've been working with the city, had some meetings. What we're looking at here is preliminary in nature, but the idea is for us to create a new gathering space, green gathering space on the west side of town, and have our building address that. We treat it as an amenity to our property, even though it's not on our property. So we have restaurant spaces that are designed to spill out onto it. We have balcony spaces that are designed to overlook it. As you move around the project, as Michael had said, we've chosen the Italianate style, so we're in compliance with the historic building requirements that downtown has. Our buildings are a mix of 3 different kinds of brick, various kinds of cast stone, various kind of cut stone looks for the base, all very traditional materials, all very high-end materials that are in keeping with the quality level of the product that we're going to deliver to the market. Also, we are, as a part of completing the block, if you will, as discussed, we are redoing the eastern side of Canton Street, that streetscape, that sidewalk program, to match what is on the western side currently. So we have the bulb outs for the street trees. We've cut it down. You have 2 parallel parking places in between each of those. So enhanced landscape, enhanced sidewalk package, enhanced pedestrian package along that entire street front. As we continue to move north, the building changes look. So instead of the red brick on the corner, we look now still an Italianate style building, but a whiter brick with whiter stone details to it. As a part, again, we're treating all of the parks adjacent to this building as amenity for any of the residents in the building. And so what we're talking about doing is also coming through and improving the pocket park that exists at the corner of Canton and Old Canton. And again, providing another restaurant, cafe kind of space that spills out and activates that park so it's better utilized. As you turn the corner up along Old Canton, again, we'll talk about parking in a little bit, but we're also enhancing, I went the wrong way, that streetscape as well, provided some on-street parking there, which is better utilized for the people visiting the project. All of our internal functions for trash are handled internal to the building behind a service door, so you won't walk by and see a dumpster or anything like that. All of our parking is housed underground in a single level of parking underground. And that's accessed behind a gate, and the only people that will access that underground parking are the residents. It's important to us to make sure that what we're providing here on the block, you don't look by at any point and see a parking lot, because that's not in keeping with what downtown should be. So all of our parking is hidden and contained under the building. And again, as we progress down Old Canton Street, you see the building changes character again to a different kind of red brick, different stone detailing, different ways of handling the same basic program. We have units, 3 floors of residential units. Our ground floor is a mix of 2 commercial spaces that we talked about that are the restaurants, as well as residential units. You can see in the renderings we're providing ample balconies for each of the residential units because outdoor space is important these days. Excuse me. The ground floor units will get patio versions of that. So just because you're on the lower level doesn't necessarily mean you don't have great outdoor space for your unit. To talk about a couple of the things that were mentioned, our parking challenge, like I said, it was important to us to try and contain all of our parking below the building. We do have a groundwater situation that limits us to going down just 1 level. We investigated early as we were looking at the building, could we potentially go down any more to provide additional parking? And even with where we're at that lower level, we're having to do extra measures to mitigate the low water table that we have.
What is the groundwater table? What's the level below ground?
It's 1,000. It's a little bit. It's about 1,007. It depends where you're at in the site. It's higher in some places than others, but I think
in feet.
Literally from where our parking deck is, it goes from at that level to 2 feet above. So we're having to find a way to channel water around that structure below the building where we're containing all the parking. That's what prevents us from trying to find additional parking underneath the building. As was mentioned, we provide a complement of 14 on-street parking places. That's our commercial requirement. That's what allows us to say all of the parking underneath the building is purely for residents and resident guests. The spaces that we're short, that we're asking the in lieu parking from, are purely guest spaces. We provide the complement of resident spaces that we need for our product type. Code requires that we provide a half a space per unit for guest parking, which for a building of 36 units means we need 18 parking places for guests. So those are the 5 places that we're asking for our in lieu parking of. Anybody coming to the project that's the general public that's coming to visit the restaurants or take advantage of anything else downtown, we provide the complement of spaces that's required on the street for those purposes. So it's purely for our own internal that we're looking for the reduction in parking. You had asked about the total size of the building. The building's a little over 112,000 square feet for the combined 4 floors. I will say, we've been working with staff on this project for a while, and making sure that as we've gone through this process, we're doing a building that everybody can get behind. So of the 20 staff recommendations on the page, we're pretty much in agreement with everything that we've been talking about. We don't see any real issues there. To touch on the units themselves, they're a high-end premium product. Our unit sizes range from about 1,400 square feet for a single bedroom up to about 3,500 square feet for a 3-bedroom unit. So they are quite large in some cases. The other item that was discussed was the tree. Our landscape architect that's involved had the same concerns as the city with a 10-inch tree. It's a big tree that has to be moved with specialized equipment, and the long-term viability of a tree that size, if it doesn't make it, what do you do, kind of thing. So 6-inch tree that we believe we can bring to the site, 2 of them would provide better than what the intent of the 10-inch tree was requiring in the first place. Past that, anything else we should? Except we're excited, looking forward to the project, and appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Any questions?
I have a quick question. As far as the parking, I understand you putting the residents underground in the parking garage and people visiting on the streets, but what about the workers who are working in the restaurants? Where are they parking?
Well, I mean, code requires 2 spaces per 1,000 for commercial, and that's what we're providing. So we're not trying to deviate at all from what the city's requirement is. Where those people park, wherever the rest of the commercial people park downtown. So we have the deck on the west side of town that's available to those people. We
I was
have the
just
Roswell
curious
Street
as to
lot.
where
Yeah.
you were thinking they were going to park.
Yeah, I
In the
assume
parking
it's in those
garage or-
locations. Correct.
Okay. Okay.
I do have a quick question. So you mentioned in your presentation that the ground floor units would have outdoor patios. Are those on the internal side or the pool side that I?
Both.
Okay.
You can see, let me pull up actually, let's go. Starting to see where one would show up better in the renderings. No, they would be, we've held the building back on purpose from the right-of-way line, so we have additional area between the sidewalk and the building that allows us to do the projected balconies that we want to do, but also at the ground level, it gives us space between where the back of that 8-foot sidewalk is and the building is to be able to do a little patio behind a low wall and a short fence.
Little example there, Tim, to the left of the circle
Okay.
garage.
Yeah.
It'll be that.
I missed that before. Thank you. Okay.
Once that park is built, is that when you deed that over to the city?
It is a city park.
Pardon?
That is city land.
Oh, it is city land?
That is city land.
Oh.
So we're merely been working with the city to say, as we're building our project, it makes sense to have that park developed at the same time.
Any other questions? All right, no further questions at this time.
Thank you.
You have some time after public comment to say rebut or add whatever you like to add. I open the meeting for public comments. Anyone in favor, please come forward.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Matthew Cadiari. I live and work at 41 Milton Avenue, adjacent to the proposed project. I want to congratulate my friend Bob Rothman on this project. I do have some concerns because I have worked downtown Alpharetta for 24 years, and for the past 3 years I've lived there. So I'm intimately aware of the traffic flow, the parking, the noise pollution, and so on and so forth. So I'm not speaking necessarily about this project in particular. My concern is the quality of life in downtown Alpharetta. There are restaurants up and down Milton Avenue, at least 5 or 6. They all have outdoor music. They're oftentimes play music, amplified music, at the same time. There is a noise ordinance that says, I think, until 11 o'clock is 65 decibel. Nobody plays 65 decibel. I know there's a particular restaurant across the street from me that stays open until 1 o'clock in the morning, and they play music until somebody calls the police to turn down their music. So as we continue to approve buildings, and we keep calculating the Lot 1, the Roswell Street lot, as part of our parking calculation, the parking deck as part of our calculation to multiple entities, as we did with the Hamilton. Hamilton has tandem parking. They hardly use it because it doesn't fit big cars. So they use public parking. I encourage the zoning commission to keep all of those factors in mind as we go forward, because part of the attraction of downtown Alpharetta is the hamlet that we were hoping for is becoming just another bucket with a bunch of bars and clubs and nuisance at night. My building has been vandalized multiple times by drunken people. So just keep that in mind. But again, I congratulate you. I hope that the restaurants, as they have, I think, Ms. Reynolds suggested, employees and, multiple people meet for dinner and so on, 14 parkings, that if the city sees that as not an issue, that's fine with me. I know with my business, I have a hair salon, it is an issue, especially for elderly people. I have campaigned for a handicap parking on the north side of the Milton Avenue for years, and I'm yet to see any movement on that. I thank you for your time.
You have been here for 24 years?
Excuse me?
You said 24 years?
I opened up my salon in 2000, 24 years.
You're the one we call a belonger. You belong. Thank you for your comments. You bring some
I'm
good insight.
Alpharetta, and I'm Alpharetta proud, and I want it to be the best it can be. And I've seen it from a cow pasture, the last of the civilization, to what it is today. So there's no question why it is attractive. But I wanted to keep it attractive because not only I make my money there, but I live there. That's my hamlet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Someone else is approaching them. State your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
My name is Mary Ann Slavic. Thank you so much for allowing me to comment tonight. I am a 40-year resident of Alpharetta, and I absolutely love this town. I live across the street from this building that is being planned. I live in Teasley Place, and I've been there for 5 years, and so I've watched a lot of wonderful things happen in downtown Alpharetta. I just wanted to bring to your attention and ask you to please consider the parking situation. This is a very convoluted parking scheme, and I'm sure that it's been well thought out, but I've had a difficult time figuring out exactly what's going on here with the parking. These are all my neighbors here from Teasley Place, and we're all concerned about the parking situation and especially the street parking. I happen to live on the top floor on Canton Street, and I have a bird's eye view of the parking and the situation with trucks coming to deliver things on a daily basis and how congested and dangerous it gets. And if I could, I just wanted to show you an example from today. Is that on the screen? Yeah, very good.
That's very creative. This is from your house?
There are 2 trucks parked across the street in non-designated parking areas. And so they're literally blocking the road. And this is a common occurrence. This happens every day. There are Amazon trucks, food trucks delivering to the restaurants in the commercial level. And so again, I think I'm just asking that you consider this when you approve the parking for this building, or all the aspects of parking, that there's going to be additional congestion because of the additional restaurants, and that provisions are made properly for parking. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and thank you for the short video. Gives good perspective. Anyone else in favor? Seeing none, anyone in opposition?
My name is Seth Pratt, and I also live at Teasley Place. And I just want to reiterate the concern for parking. It seems foolish to me that they can claim all those existing on-street parking spaces as new spaces in support of the retail space that they have. We already have a hard time with parking at the time that restaurants are popular, and adding more restaurants is just going to make that worse. So thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else in opposition? Seeing none, I'll close public comment and open this up for the board for a motion on the discussion. I think the point about how parking is very well taken. I was going to revisit this underground parking or below ground parking and the water table. I'm surprised the water table is that high at this very high level in the downtown area. I know this is probably very expensive to do, but can you dewater and add more parking underground during construction? Have you considered that? It's a huge dewatering experience.
Yeah, I'm Dan Connor, I'm the applicant of record. We've studied it both ways. So we had GeoHydro, you guys are familiar with, that came in and did water samples on the site. Even when we're doing this, we're going to need to dewater the site at least during construction and potentially put in pumps permanently in that lower garage. They came back to us and said a second floor would be impossible because it would affect adjoining properties. So once we started affecting adjoining properties and actually affecting the water table itself, we went a different direction from that. I think it's important to mention that, again, to what was mentioned earlier in the presentation, is that we're looking for relief against the visitor parking spots. We're trying to look from 18 spaces down to 14 spaces. And just for context, Teasley has 3 or 4. Is it Teasley's visitor parking spaces?
I'm sorry?
Visitor parking spaces at Teasley?
We have a whole deck of about 50 or 60 spaces.
Visitor parking?
Yeah. Public.
Okay, so assigned visitor parking at Teasley is 3 or 4, is what's shown over there. Same with the lofts. So that's what we're looking for the break-in, and we want to keep everything underneath. The commercial parking we've spoken for.
If there is a way you can figure out how to increase the parking before council, that would be very helpful.
To do what, excuse me?
Before this goes to council, if it goes to council, to see how you can increase the number of parking spaces. I don't know what improvements. I know you're going to make some streetscape improvements around the building, whether it's going to, improve traffic flow. I don't know, but I did hear concern about congestion in that area during the day.
I have a quick question for Michael, if I may. So on the on-street parking, there is on-street parking on that side of the road now. So are we talking there's an additional, are they counting those parking spots in their parking calculation?
Yes, our code allows for on-street parking adjacent to your property to be counted to meet minimum parking requirements.
So those aren't new parking spots, they're already in existence?
The ones on Canton Street are in existence. They're just striped right now. The developer is actually going to improve that area where they'll bring the planters out to the street and define the parallel along Canton Street. They're adding 6 additional on-street parking spaces on Old Canton Street.
Okay.
And you done? I am. Okay. Michael, just a quick question. I want to make sure at a high level I've got the right numbers in front of me. Let me play what I've got and tell me if I've got it right. So per our code for this project, 101 spaces are required?
Correct.
And then if you count, and then if you look at what the applicant has, they actually have 96 physical spaces, 82 in the deck and 14 on the street.
Correct.
So that's a shortfall of 5.
Correct.
But when an applicant such as this has a shortfall, as in this example of 5, our code calls for the opportunity for the applicant to pay parking in lieu fees to address that shortfall.
That is an option, yep.
And in this case, that would be $22,500.
For the 5 spaces, yes.
But there are 18 tandem parking spaces.
Correct.
That's why
within the 96.
The
Of the
96.
96,
Of the
18 are tandem.
82 in the deck, 18 are tandem, 14 are commercial, correct?
The 82 parking spaces in the parking deck are going to be just for the residential use at this building. There are an additional 14 on-street parking spaces that could be used to meet the requirement for the restaurant space.
You count the spaces in the park? In the city park?
There are no spaces in
There
in
is
the
no
city.
spaces,
No.
there is no parking in the park.
So wait.
There may be some on-street, on Canton Street, adjacent to the city park,
Okay.
but that is not counted. They're not counting that. They can only count what's adjacent to their
Adjacent
property.
to.
So back to the chairman's question about how do we come up with 96, right? There's 14 in the street, 82 in the deck, right?
Yep.
And of the 82 in the deck, 18 are tandem, correct?
Correct.
And what are the balance? The remaining
The 82 minus the 18 would be the balance of regular
residential
single
parking.
parking spaces, yes.
So that's 64.
And there's 36 units.
Right.
Michael, may I ask you a question as it relates to the code, our current parking code? So based on the packet, for commercial parking, our code is, according to this, it's 2 per 1,000 square foot.
That is right.
And our code doesn't differentiate by product type, office versus medical office versus restaurant. It's just 2 per 1,000, no matter what the type of usage is.
The 2 per 1,000 applies to restaurant and retail. If it was medical office or office, that would require 3 per 1,000.
Okay. See, that just, to me, from what I've seen in like Urban Land Institute numbers, restaurant would typically have a factor multiple times what you would have for retail.
It is that way for the rest of the city. These are parking rates specific to just the
Specific to
downtown
this.
overlay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's
So
all.
when we created the downtown, did the downtown master plan update in 2015, we were really trying to attract restaurants. There was a time when I started with the city just about 10 years ago where we didn't have many restaurant opportunities downtown. And to encourage folks to come into downtown, we had that lower parking rate.
Okay, so it serves as an incentive for development, but not necessarily a realistic look at what the vehicle demand would be for a restaurant.
It was done as an incentive, however, we did come up with other creative alternatives, which is these parking in lieu fees, the parking special exception. Again, also in the downtown, we do anticipate a lot of customers that will frequent those restaurants will walk. They won't necessarily drive there. So there's a lot of people that are already living in downtown and they'll walk. Folks that live in Teasley Place or Alpharetta Lofts or West Domain up the street may walk over and utilize these restaurants.
Hey, Michael, when Teasley Place was built, were they able to use the on-street parking as part of their meeting their quota?
They were, yes.
Did they?
I would have to go back to that to verify. I believe that they did count that parking, the on-street parking, but I'd have to verify that.
Michael, I do have 2 quick questions for you. So we did have some comments about delivery, what I call the traditional commercial. We have had to go back into the area around City Center here and restripe and realign and one-way only, to much confusion of our residents. None of that is, if someone's moving into their condo, where's that moving truck going? So can you just kind of highlight what that looks like? Because the restaurants are going to get deliveries and they're going to block a road based on what I saw. And Amazon's coming every day, whether we like it or not. So.
Yes, so this is a problem that we're aware of, and administration is looking at that right now. So parking management downtown is something that we're looking at, as well as parking and loading for deliveries. I come in just like you. I come into downtown every day to come into work, and I pass those delivery trucks. And as I leave, I see them out parked in the center of Milton Avenue. So yes, we do understand that there's some issues with loading and for deliveries, and that is something that we are looking at right now. I'm not 100% certain, but I believe we may have an RFP potentially out for that. So it is in the works.
Okay, and then my second question has to do with comment number 17. There was some red line language that was provided. Developer shall provide creative signage, and then it was redlined to have the option to install. I think that's a pretty big difference there, so I'd like just to get your clarity on what you want, the staff is interested in.
So we would just prefer that 17 stay as staff proposed. I think you may want to ask the applicant about that. I spoke to them briefly before the meeting started this evening, and I think they just had some confusion on what that is. I think they were thinking that we were saying that they had to provide signage for the building. You know, we were really concerned about the 2 restaurant spaces. We know that they'll want some kind of signage, and we just didn't want the typical signage that you would see with a restaurant. In downtown, we're really trying to get this more creative signage where you paint the sign on the side of the building, or you have a blade or perpendicular sign. The Standard, for example, has the awnings, and they have their signage on the awnings. So we're looking for something more creative than just the typical.
So the creative language there would be developers shall provide creative signage for retail and restaurant spaces such as painted signs, blade signs, perpendicular signs with final approval. You're not trying to brand the condo aspect of it?
No.
Okay, so that would be something.
We were just saying any signage that was needed for this building, whether it's for residential or if they want to put, I don't even know offhand if our code would allow a sign for the actual building, the condo building. But if it did, we would want it to be more creative signage as we described.
All right, thank you.
DRB does a good job, so as long as their name is attached to it, I'm fine with it. And any further comments? Did I give you time for rebuttal after public comment? No? This is it. If you want to say something, add anything to it?
I think we're okay.
Okay. All right, I'll turn this over to the board for discussion and no motion. You can ask questions during discussion to the applicant or staff.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to make a comment.
Yes.
And that is to the residents of Teasley and all of us. I live a mile or so from downtown, so I get the benefit of it without having to be right in the downtown congestion when it becomes congested. But I would suggest going to the public safety department, police, and saying, hey, could you come over here, have somebody come over here, a police car, and watch this and monitor it, because I do think I've been stopped behind those Amazon trucks there. They've made it where you can't turn right anymore in that intersection, Canton and Milton Avenue, which makes it all worse. So it's ancillary to this project, but I would definitely get public safety involved and say, hey, there's a problem here, and it's a safety issue, and they are very responsive to that kind of thing, and they would, I'm sure, come out and evaluate, maybe sit there for a few days and give you some help with that.
We have very few undeveloped areas within the downtown area, and I can see a lot of redevelopment coming up. This is something we have to pay very close attention to, because it's not just the buildings and the businesses. If you don't have an operational transportation system, nothing is going to work. And in addition to that, public safety, that's number one. We have to make sure that we maintain excellent public safety in our city, and also good traffic flow, because it can become too congested and very unworkable. So it's something for staff to be looking out to, because the more we redevelop and develop, the more congested our roads are going to be, or the schools are also going to be burdened with a lot of kids. And I always say, city planning is not rocket science, it's worse than rocket science. Because you're dealing with people and people think on their own, so it's hard to manage traffic flow within a city. So there are so many competing interests that you have to deal with. But with respect to the building, it looks very nice. It's very, very beautiful. They do have a constraint in terms of the configuration of this space and also on the parking side, which I can't tell you how to solve it. I know you have tried every which way, but between now and council, if you can find a way to find those spaces, it's good for the residents, it's good for the city. Any other comments, motion?
I've got a comment, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman. I'll just start with this. The applicant that presented used the phrase signature building, and I completely agree with that. I think when done, if per the renderings, this might be in the running for the most attractive building in the downtown area. I also like the fact, on the positive side, the knowledge and the appreciation for what I call kind of the Alpharetta, especially in the downtown overlay, the Alpharetta look and feel relative to architecture, the I don't even know how to pronounce it, Italianic, that's compliant with the city code, making the buildings offset so they don't look highly dense and mass from the street, I think is absolutely perfect. I think the mixed-use residential restaurant is perfect for the downtown. On the parking, I understand the concern of the public, and that's why that was my first question tonight, was about the parking and how it's oriented. I do resonate with the limitation of the water table. I like the fact that the parking's underground. And at the end of the day, from where I sit, I kind of got to be real detailed back to our city code. And if our city code requires 101 spaces and they provide 96, and the staff says that when you have a gap like that of 5, any applicant that comes here can pay parking in lieu fees to address that gap, I have trouble not being supportive when I compare what they're providing relative to the code, and everything is in sync with the code. And that's how I'd want to be viewed if I was the applicant. The vendor trucks is a separate issue, and Michael is exactly right. The city council, if you go back on the city portal, it was either last month's meeting or the meeting before, they presented a comprehensive plan, preliminary plan, for how to address that. And I'm going to shorten a 90-minute discussion to 30 seconds, but their vision is, and it's not final yet, but to have designated delivery parking spots that the vendor trucks must follow. The big Cisco truck that everybody's aware of is included in that. And if those vendors do not park in those designated spots, heavy fines would result. So that's the preliminary vision. Like I said, it's not completed yet, but that should address the lady's concern as far as that goes. And I also wouldn't want to hold this applicant responsible. You know, if I recommend denying based on that, I feel like it's not something that they can control. So that's my take.
I would agree, everything you said, Todd. The only thing I would maybe challenge our city council is that while I understand the lump sum parking in lieu fee and the incentive of trying to get businesses in, that impact fee doesn't really make the residents feel better tomorrow. And so I think that maybe we need to encourage our city council to reconsider other ways of helping to address this parking issue in the future.
Anyone ready to make a motion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion. A motion to approve Z-24-06/PH-24-06/V-24-0655 Canton and to deny the variance to allow tandem parking subject to the following conditions. As staff has presented, keeping number 9 as staff has presented.
Number 9, I thought Michael said 6-inch.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, yes, I have his check next to that, I apologize.
I agree with that.
Sorry.
Arborist.
Staff, number 9, as developer, or applicant has presented, I apologize, got my notes wrong. Number 17, to be left as staff has presented, developer shall provide creative signage, keep going, that's it. Again, DRB will be reviewing that. Scratching number 18, per what Michael had said, staff had said. And then the new number 18, which was 19, as presented by the red line. So scratching, there shall be no construction, traffic, parking, or staging on Canton Street, and replacing that language with a construction staging plan shall be provided with an LDP, subject to final approval by staff.
I'll second.
Motion has been made and properly seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. Again, council considers it on April the 29th. Thank you for your presentation, and you look just like an architect. Thank you. We have one more item. Does the board want to take a break? Oh, you're fine. Okay. Kathy is usually quick on these. It's PH-24-07, UDC text amendments, hotels, and Ms. Cook is going to be presenting.
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. The next one is a change to our Unified Development Code. Staff is recommending amendments to the Unified Development Code, Article 1 and 2, to amend the definition of extended stay hotel, add a definition for hotel hybrid and hotel hybrid use in certain zoning districts, amend the miscellaneous regulations pertaining to extended stay hotels, and add miscellaneous regulations pertaining to the hotel hybrid use. Also, there's an amendment of the UDC Section 1.4 definitions, amend UDC Section 2.2 permitted use districts and regulations, and amend UDC Section 2.7 miscellaneous regulations. And a lot of that is just because there's a new type of hotel, so we make sure that we get the definition in here. So when we put a new definition in for hotels, we have to make sure that other hotel definitions that we have are different, and they're not the same. So all of these changes are based on adding that new hotel hybrid use. And the main difference is the average length of stay. So with an extended stay hotel, you'll see that we made some changes because it's usually less than a month, so we're just clarifying that. And in contrast to a hybrid hotel, which can be split between, not really split, 1 week is the majority of the stay, and then up to 30% of the rooms could be for longer term, even up to a year. And this is a new type of hotel that we've seen, and most of those that we've seen are 4-star or above hotels. So it's not something that we want, it's not something we want to exclude from Alpharetta. We want to make sure that we have it in the code and have those opportunities for these 4-star and up hybrid hotels. So those are the definitions that we're looking at. And we even require that as part of the regulations. If you are approved for a hybrid hotel, you would have to meet the miscellaneous regulations.
Can I stop you for just a second? What prompted this addition to the code for the hybrid hotel? I know it's a very new concept.
It is a new concept, but it's something that, and we're not doing this for any particular applicant. It's just that we've had requests over the last year. There's nothing pending for this, and we've actually seen some new hotels that have been built at Trilith. I don't know if you're familiar with Trilith, a mixed-use development, and that is a hybrid hotel. So what we're finding is the hybrid hotel will offer up to 30% of the rooms for up to a 1-year stay because you have corporate travelers, and they may have assignments that are longer. And they're really like small apartments because they do have food, kitchenettes located within those rooms.
And walking space.
Yeah. And I'll go through those regulations that would be required if they're approved.
So we have had some inquiries about
Yes.
hybrid hotels. Okay.
And it's interesting because some of the inquiries we've had where they wanted to build a hybrid hotel and they weren't permitted because our code didn't have a definition, they could build a hotel by right. So they're already allowed a hotel by right, so they said, well, we'll just then build the hotel. Well, nothing against 2- and 3-star hotels, but if you do go to a hybrid hotel and have that capability, you will end up with, in most cases, a 4-star or above hotel. So we wanted to make sure that we're not missing out on those types of hotels. And I'll put the regulations here for the requirements. So for the hybrid hotel, and I do have one change that I'm going to show, and it's highlighted in yellow. A conditional use permit is approved, so there's nowhere that this would be allowed by right. It would have to go through the public hearing process. So even if you do have a site that's allowed by right, a hotel, that doesn't interchange with, you could do a hybrid hotel or extended stay. A hotel, since it's a separate definition, any changes from that would require a public hearing. So with the definition of hybrid hotel, we give the opportunity to apply for the conditional use, but you would have to meet several different requirements. 1, minimum lot or development size for hybrid hotels is 3 acres. This is the same that we have for extended stays. 2, the building shall contain no more than 30% of guest rooms for long-term stays. That's the stays up to a year. 3, buildings shall be rated by Forbes or AAA as 4 stars or better. Building or development shall have a minimum 60,000 square foot conference room, event space, or group meeting space with banquet facilities. Now, this is what we added. Staff is looking for your consideration to consider adding event space. So not only could they have, be part of a development that has 60,000 square foot conference room, but it could also be event space, because it could be sporting event space. So we want to make sure that if we have a mixed-use development that also has a sports-type facility, that they could request the hybrid hotel. Again, as part of a conditional use, not by right. And then 5, buildings shall have a minimum 3,000 square foot sit-down restaurant with table service. So sometimes you'll see with just the hotel definition, you can have a 3,000 square foot restaurant, but it doesn't require table service because it could be just Danishes, something for people to pick up. So this actually requires table service. And then 5, all guest rooms which have facilities for the refrigeration and preparation of food by guests shall have a minimum of 400 square feet of floor area. And those would be in addition to 7, which has the minimum 25% of gross area of the lot must be designed and used as outdoor amenity space. These are very similar, the rest of those, of what we have for extended stay hotels. We also brought in 8, 9, and 10, which those are also requirements that we have for extended stay hotels. So a lot of the regulations you see are very similar to what we have for extended stay hotels. Are there any questions on those? We also have some new regulations for extended stay as well as the hybrid hotel. Yes.
Yes, I do have 2 questions. Can you put the other page back up? Sorry, the first page, number 7. I wanted to ask. No, on the number 6, you talk about the refrigeration and preparation of food by guests. So are you designating that just for the 30 rooms that are the extended?
Correct. 30%.
So not every hotel room will have that?
That's correct. It's only 30%. And some of the other differences with an extended stay
But
hotel.
it
you have to-
says all guest rooms.
Which have facilities.
Okay,
Right.
so only the ones that are in that category.
Yeah, you're already restricted to no more than 30%, but then it has requirements for those particular
Okay.
guest rooms.
I
And the
just-
difference
see where I was
too
making sure.
is with an extended stay, you can have a central laundry. You cannot have central laundry as part of a hybrid hotel.
Oh, okay.
Those are individual within a room.
And then my other question is on the next page, number 10. So with this added word of event space, do you want to, I think you might need to add it on number 10. Go put number 10 back up.
10.
Sorry.
Right here.
Convention rooms, conference rooms, restaurants, you should put event space. Because if you're attached.
I see what you're saying. Yes, yes. So you're talking about the parking requirements.
Thank you. Would be my recommendation. Because you could have a.
Yeah, and it would be, a lot of times though, a sporting event facility would be separate, so they would have their own separate parking requirements, but they could be part of a larger master plan. So you could have, say, a 100-acre master plan that has a separate sporting event that has their parking, and then if you're going to request a conditional use for a hybrid hotel, you wouldn't have to necessarily meet sporting event parking since it could be a separate use. But I see what you're talking about. We do need to look at some adjustments to that.
Where I'm just trying to think in terms of where else they have hybrid hotels, and is there anything that we need to know or you have researched that tells you how they're operating?
They're pretty new. I mean, they're pretty new, and they've only been around for the last couple of years. The only one that we're familiar with and have visited is the hotel at Trilith, which is a hybrid hotel just like this. Again, we've also had inquiries for hybrid hotels, but the only ones we've had to visit and see in person is at Trilith.
Now, is a hybrid hotel, you have to be like on a
Jill,
mixed use? Do you have to be on a mixed-use property to be a hybrid, or can it be standalone?
And we also put I should have went through that, we had to put the zoning categories that you could request, the conditional use. So we have a conditional use in the CUP, OI, C2, PSC, light industrial, and mixed use. So you don't have to be part of a mixed use, but you would have to have the 60,000 square feet of event space, conference space.
And it's a conditional use, so they have to be approved on a case-by-case basis.
Correct.
Yeah, this is very new. I'm not familiar with it. I know even the concept of the Airbnb is very recent, and there are some things coming up with Airbnbs now that a more controlled environment might actually be better within a hotel environment. That's just thinking out loud. Because Airbnbs, people get a key or a code, they open the door, and they do all sorts of things. In a hotel, they're going through the front desk, and everybody knows who is staying where. It's an additional way to accommodate business travelers who need extended stays. I was questioning about the length of time, a whole year, which is more like a lease of an apartment. People can lease an apartment for a whole year or stay in a hotel, which is much more expensive.
True, yeah, 4 seasons.
Full season?
Yeah. May have condo-type units at the top.
Yeah.
Can you turn your microphone on, DC?
The Battery, or where the Gwinnett Stripers are? I don't know, just a guess.
Yeah, no experience with it, but it's the more I think about it, the more I feel like, or believe, I don't like to feel, that it might be a better setup than an Airbnb, where there is more control of entry, occupancy, and I would assume the hotels would be cleaning the rooms, and it's more secure for travelers. Yeah, then we don't want a lot of Airbnb in Alpharetta. Well, I shouldn't say that, but
And there's
it's out
services
there
that could
now.
be, room service, things like that. So there's a higher level of service.
And the fact that it's going to be coming back for conditional use approval gives the city a little more control. All right. Any more questions for Ms. Cook?
And so the changes to the extended stay are just also clarifying the definitions, so they're not contradicting each other.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
what-
And the only thing that we added to both the extended stay as well as the hybrid hotel after speaking to code enforcement is, and they both have the same requirements, so we're treating them both the same, but we did put requirements in there that parking of inoperable vehicles and vehicles backed into parking spaces with a license plate not visible from the parking lot aisle shall be prohibited. And that's just so, we have a safe hotels ordinance, so it's just saying, the managers need to make sure that anybody parking at hotels, you can see their license plate and make sure that it's not something that's inoperable or it's just part of the safe hotel, so we want to make sure that we're promoting that. And then 5, off-street parking lot lighting shall have an average foot candle of 3 and maximum foot candles of 6.0. Parking lot lighting shall be maintained in good working order. And then lastly, we added 8, facilities under this section shall maintain parking lot and landscape strip shrubs along the property's road frontage at a height not to exceed 4 feet. And this is because a lot of times you'll see that they grow to 6 to 8 feet, and it's really disguising some of these parking lots. So we want to have clear visibility into the parking lot as well as lighting. And that concludes all the changes. If there's any other questions, I'd be glad to try to answer those.
I believe it's a good addition to be ahead of the curve in terms of how we manage our city, and we will probably learn a lot more when we have applications come before us. We can always say no.
Kathy, I'll make a motion. Any other discussion? Public comment? Public comment?
We have somebody in the audience who'd like to weigh in on this discussion.
It's very exciting.
We like your comment on. Yeah, you had some good comments on trees, so thank you. Yeah, we can discuss even after our motion.
All right, so I'll make a motion that we approve PH-24-07, the UDC text amendments, hotels, as described by Ms. Cook. And the only comment I'll make is staff is going to review that event space language before.
Thank you.
Second. Thank you.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Sometimes the things we say here are for those who are listening, because you want to add some context and educate people why you're voting the way you are. So discussions are always very important, because it's not just among us, friends, it's everybody else is watching. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries. Anything else anyone wants to talk about? Hearing none. Meeting adjourned. Turn off your mics.